From the day Amaka met Tenny at the dusty, overcrowded school compound when they were 9 years old, she believed God had finally given her the sister she always prayed for. Amaka had grown up quiet, gentle, and easily moved to tears. Tenny was the opposite. Bold, loud, full of fire, always pushing others, always wanting attention. Their classmates used to joke that the two of them were one body, two spirits. What they didn't know was this. Some spirits don't come to keep you warm. Some come to burn your entire life silently. Amaka never saw the darkness in Tenny, not even once. She only saw a girl who needed love. Every little food Amaka brought from home, she shared with her. Every little gift she got for her birthday, she bought one for Tenny too. When Amaka won prizes in school, she called Tenny to stand with her on stage because we did it together. Even the teachers used to smile and say, if loyalty was a person, it's Amaka. And if jealousy was a person, it was quietly living in Tenny's heart. But Amaka never noticed. To her, Tenny was the sister God forgot to give her at birth. As they grew into young women, their bond only seemed stronger. Amaka graduated, started a small fashion business, and slowly began building a soft, gentle life for herself. Tenny didn't have much direction. Today, she wanted to be a nurse. Tomorrow, she wanted to be an influencer. Next week, she wanted to learn hairstyling. She kept jumping from one thing to another. But no matter how confused Tenny's life looked, Amaka was always there. She let Tenny sleep in her house. When Tenny fought with her mother, she gave her money just to hold body. She even bought her clothes so she could fit in when we go out. It was always Amaka giving and Tenny taking. Still, Amaka loved her deeply. She used to tell people, if I'm married tomorrow, Tenny is my maid of honor, no one else. She did not know that the same girl she was calling sister was studying her life like a thief preparing for the perfect robbery. One rainy Friday afternoon, Amaka's life changed forever. She met the man who would become her husband. It happened inside her shop. He walked in with his calm voice, clean haircut, and warm smile that made Amaka's shy heart shake like Gelly in a storm. His name was Richard, a gentle, hard-working man who respected her confidence and adored her kindness. Amaka didn't even believe she deserved someone like him. But Richard saw her, really saw her. He saw the way she laughed with her whole heart. He saw how she prayed before opening her shop. He saw how she treated everyone with kindness. He saw the purest form of womanhood in her, something rare. And as months passed, their love grew. One evening, when he proposed to her under the dim golden lights of a quiet restaurant, Amaka cried like a child because she couldn't believe God remembered her. Tenny was the first person she called. My sister, I'm getting married. Amaka screamed into the phone. There was silence on the other end, just for 3 seconds, but Amaka didn't notice. 3 seconds was long enough for jealousy to take its first breath. Then Tenny laughed loudly, screamed, and pretended to cry tears of joy. But her heart was boiling, because for the first time, she realized something she never admitted before. Amaka had the life she wanted, the love she wanted, the man she wanted, the peace she wanted, and now Amaka had something she could steal. A few weeks later, the day Richard came to officially meet Amaka's friends and family, Tenny dressed in a tight gold gown that hugged her body like a sin that refused to repent. She wore bright lipstick, long eyelashes, and perfume so sweet even strangers turned to look. When Richard walked into the room, Tenny smiled slowly at him, a smile too long, too deep, too sharp, and in that single moment, a seed was planted, small, dark, dangerous, a seed that would one day grow into betrayal Amaka would never recover from, the betrayal that would make every woman watching this story cry. But on this day, Amaka didn't see it. She only saw her two favorite people smiling warmly at each other. She held Tenny's hand and whispered, "Sister, I can't wait for you to stand beside me on my wedding day." Tenny squeezed her hand back, but the smile she gave was not love. It was hunger, a slow, evil hunger, for a life she didn't deserve. And that was the beginning of the end, the beginning of the evil best friend to ever exist. Amaka believed marriage had finally opened the door to her happiest season. She spent her mornings arranging new fabrics, her afternoons planning bridal details, and her evenings laughing on the phone with Richard, her soon-to-be husband. Everything felt perfect, too perfect. And sometimes when a woman's life becomes too peaceful, the devil sends someone close enough to know where to strike. That person was Tenny. After Richard's first visit, something in Tenny shifted like a snake waking from quiet grass. She started visiting Amaka's house more often, wearing body-hugging clothes, heavy eyelashes, and perfume that arrived 5 seconds before she entered the room. Whenever Amaka opened the door, Tenny would laugh loudly and say, "I just came to help my sister plan her wedding." But Richard wasn't blind. He noticed how her eyes lingered on him too long. He noticed the way she leaned close unnecessarily. He noticed how she touched his arm when she talked. He felt uncomfortable, but because she was the best friend, he didn't want to be disrespectful. One day, while Amaka was in the kitchen cooking jollof rice, Tenny walked into the living room where Richard was watching football. She stood in front of the TV, smiling, twisting her waist slowly like she was posing for invisible cameras. "Richard," she said softly, "I hope you know my sister is very lucky to have you." He nodded politely. "Thank you." Tenny stepped closer, too close. Her voice dropped into a fake softness. "If you ever need anything at all, you can always ask me. You're family now." Richard sat upright immediately. He knew this tone. He knew this kind of woman, the type that hides poison beneath perfume. So he stood up and walked straight to the kitchen. "Your friend," he whispered to Amaka, "she's intense." But Amaka laughed it off. "Ah, don't mind her. She loves big gestures. That's how she is." Richard nodded, even though a small warning bell was ringing in his mind. As weeks passed, small things began happening. One afternoon, Amaka stepped out to buy thread. When she returned, she found Tenny sitting on her sofa, wearing Amaka's slippers, drinking Amaka's juice, and scrolling through Amaka's phone casually. "My sister, I was bored," she said without shame. Something inside Amaka felt uneasy, but she smiled, trying to stay positive. Another time, Richard dropped by unexpectedly. Tenny opened the door wearing a short towel, pretending she'd just finished bathing. She laughed loudly while tying the towel tighter and saying, "Ah, my brother, you should have called. I would have worn clothes." Richard avoided eye contact and stepped back immediately. When Amaka arrived later, he told her gently, "Please, tell your friend to respect boundaries." Instead of listening, Amaka felt embarrassed. "She doesn't mean harm," she said. "She's just dramatic." Richard didn't argue. But deep inside, he told himself, something is wrong with this girl. Still, Amaka refused to see it. The friendship had lasted too long for her to believe that someone she called sister could be an enemy wearing love as a disguise. She believed loyalty could cure people. She believed kindness could change hearts. But jealousy is a hunger kindness cannot satisfy. And Tenny was starving, especially for something that didn't belong to her. One Saturday afternoon, while Amaka was adjusting her wedding gown in the tailor's shop, she overheard Tenny talking to one of the tailors at the back. "She's too naive," Tenny said. "She doesn't even know how to keep a man. If not for me stepping in sometimes, her man would have left long ago." The tailor gasped softly. But Tenny continued proudly, "Let me not even start. I'm the one keeping their relationship stable. She doesn't know how to take care of him." Amaka froze. Her eyes filled with tears she fought to swallow. Her hands shook, pressing into the white fabric. Why would Tenny say such a thing? Why would she degrade her? Why would she lie? The tailor tried to defend Amaka. "Sister, Amaka is a good woman." "Please," Tenny cut in, "good women lose their men every day." Amaka quietly stepped back before they could see her. Her heart was breaking, but she couldn't confront Tenny. She didn't know how to fight someone she loved. She didn't want drama. She didn't want fights. She just wanted peace. But peace needs two gentle hearts. And Tenny didn't have one. That night, Amaka cried quietly on her pillow, wondering what she did wrong. Richard held her, confused and worried. "My love, talk to me," he whispered. But she couldn't. Not yet. She didn't want to believe her best friend was becoming Something else. The next day, as they sat in church, the pastor preached. Some enemies were the close of friendship. Pray for eyes that see beyond smiles. Amaka felt a deep shiver run through her, and when she glanced sideways, she saw Tenny staring at Richard from across the pew, eyes locked on him like he was the only person in the room, not even blinking, not even hiding it. Something dark passed between them, not love, but desire. And in that moment, Amaka's heart began to understand a painful truth. Her best friend wasn't just jealous. She wanted her life. She wanted her man. And she was willing to cross any boundary to take him. This was the beginning of the betrayal that would break her. This was the chapter where love became a target. This was the chapter where the evil best friend began her mission. If there is one thing more dangerous than an enemy, it is a friend who pretends to love you while secretly sharpening a knife behind you. That was the type of darkness that began growing inside Tenny. Slowly, quietly, patiently, like a snake waiting for the right moment to strike. After that day in church, the atmosphere around the three of them changed completely. Amaka noticed it first, not in big ways, but in small, painful whispers life gave her. Sometimes she would catch Tenny staring too long at Richard. Sometimes she would see her friend adjusting her blouse when he entered the room, dragging her neckline lower. Sometimes she would see how quickly Tenny responded whenever Richard spoke, even if the conversation wasn't for her. But each time Amaka's heart tried to warn her, she drowned it with excuses. She's just being dramatic. She's excited for me. She's trying to help. She's still my sister. She can't betray me. But betrayal was already happening, just not in the way she imagined. A week before the traditional wedding, something happened that shook the foundation of trust Amaka held so tightly. Richard was coming over to finalize the bridesmaids list when his car broke down halfway. Amaka begged him to take a ride from a nearby mechanic shop. Once he was on the way, she called Tenny excitedly. "My love, Richard is coming. Let's finalize the outfits." Tenny's voice was too sweet, too soft. "Okay, sister, I'm already close by. Let me just stop at your house first." Amaka didn't think twice. She continued ironing the lace fabric she wanted to wear for her introduction ceremony. Meanwhile, Tenny arrived at the house before Richard did, and the moment she stepped inside, she began arranging her trap. She opened some buttons on her blouse, sprayed more perfume, and positioned herself on the sofa like she owned the house. She crossed her legs slowly, intentionally exposing more skin. She tossed her hair back and practiced a seductive smile in the reflection of the TV screen. She wasn't just jealous. She was planning. When Richard arrived, he opened the door with his usual polite smile until he saw her. Tenny stood up immediately, walking toward him with slow, hungry steps. "Richard, you're finally here," she said, voice dripping like honey mixed with poison. Richard stepped back slightly. "Good evening. Amaka is—" "Oh, please, she's inside." Tenny cut in, placing her hand on his shoulder before he could avoid it. "Sit down. Let me get you water." "No, thank you," Richard said firmly, removing her hand gently but clearly. "I'm fine." Tenny's smile twitched, but she regained her fake softness. "You don't need to be shy. We're family." Richard said nothing. He walked past her quickly. But Tenny wasn't finished. She followed him slowly, whispering, You can talk to me. If Amaka ever stresses you, I understand, man. I can help you handle." Richard stopped and turned sharply. "Please stop," he said quietly but firmly. "It's enough." At that moment, Tenny finally saw it. Richard wasn't tempted by her. He wasn't moved by her games. He wasn't like the men she used to manipulate easily, and that made her furious. But when Richard walked into the room, he found Amaka smiling shyly while folding fabric. He hugged her softly, kissed her forehead, and said, "I love you." Tenny stood at the doorway watching the tenderness she wished someone would ever show her, watching the respect she had never earned, watching the love she could never attract. And something broke inside her, something dark. From that moment, she decided, if she couldn't have that love, she would destroy it, even if it meant destroying Amaka too. The poison began with small drops. First, She started whispering lies to Richard in the name of helping. One afternoon, when Amaka was distracted, Tenny cornered him outside and said, "You need to watch Amaka. She gets angry easily. She hides things from you. I've known her since childhood." Richard frowned. "That doesn't sound like her." Tenny forced a sad sigh. "You're her husband-to-be. I'm only trying to protect you." Richard walked away. But a tiny seed of doubt was planted. Next, she started twisting Amaka's words. If Amaka said Richard should rest, Tenny told Richard, she said, "You're lazy." If Amaka said, "I'm stressed today," Tenny told him, she said, "You're stressing her." If Amaka said, "Let's save money," Tenny told him, she said, "You're stingy." Slowly, the peaceful air between the couple started to tighten. Richard would suddenly ask, "Why would you say that about me?" Amaka, confused, would ask, "Say what?" Misunderstandings grew like weeds in their once perfect garden, and Tenny watered those weeds every single day. But the worst was yet to come. One night, while Amaka and Richard were laughing on the balcony, Tenny stood behind the curtains watching them, her face emotionless, her eyes unblinking. When Richard kissed Amaka gently, something inside Tenny snapped. She turned away, reached for her phone, and started her next plan. She messaged someone with a wicked smile. "Are you ready? It's time to break them." Who she texted, what the plan was, how deep her hatred had grown. Amaka had no idea. She still believed Tenny loved her. She still believed Tenny was her sister. She still believed the world was safe. But darkness was already at her door, and she had no idea this was a chapter where her life would break open like a wound she never saw coming. This was the beginning of the downfall of a good woman. This was the beginning of the storm. This was the poison of jealousy. Betrayal does not arrive loudly. It does not knock. It slips in quietly, sits at the back of your life, and waits for the perfect moment to strike. For Amaka, that moment came like a thief at dawn, slow, cold, and unexpected. After weeks of whispered lies, twisted conversations, and burning jealousy, Tenny realized something. Richard was not the type of man she could seduce easily. He valued loyalty. He respected boundaries. He loved Amaka deeply. So if she couldn't pull him toward herself, she would push him away from Amaka. And she began her mission with the skill of someone who had practiced wickedness her whole life. One Thursday evening, Amaka and Richard were returning from a meeting with the decorator when Tenny arrived at the house unannounced. She wore a deliberately short gown, her face painted like someone attending a Friday nightlife party, instead of a simple visit to a friend. Amaka smiled warmly. "Come in, my sister. Want to eat something?" "I cooked." But Tenny barely responded to her. Her eyes were fixed on Richard. "Let me help him take the bags," she said, rushing toward him. Richard stepped aside. "No, thank you." Tenny forced a laugh. "Aha, are we fighting? You're acting shy around me lately." Richard looked at her sharply. "I'm not shy. I just want space." Amaka shifted uncomfortably. Her heart tightened. Something wasn't right. But Tenny continued her performance. She followed him into the living room, swaying her hips like she was dancing to music only she could hear. "Amaka," she said sweetly, "let me help you prepare Richard's plate." Before Amaka could respond, Tenny had already taken the plate to the kitchen, plating the food with exaggerated care, bending low intentionally so her dress rose. Richard refused to sit. "Tenny," he said firmly, "you're making me uncomfortable." Amaka turned sharply. "What do you mean?" Richard hesitated. He didn't want to embarrass his fiancé, but he had to protect her. So he said quietly, "Your friend is crossing boundaries." Silence fell. A heavy, painful silence. Tenny froze mid-step. Her eyes flickered with shame. No, with anger. Amaka tried to laugh. "Aha, Richard, don't say that. She's been my sister since childhood." Tenny dropped the plate sharply. It clattered against the kitchen counter. "Sister?" she repeated softly, her voice trembling, not with pain, but with fury. "Is that all I am to you? After everything?" Amaka blinked, confused. "Everything like what?" Tenny's eyes became dark and cold. "You know what, Amaka? I'm tired. Tired of being treated like trash." tired of being ignored, tired of being seen as a joke. You think just because you have a man now, you're better than me? What? Amaka whispered. Richard stepped protectively closer to Amaka. Tenny's voice rose, sharp and vicious. You think you're special? You think he loves you more than he could ever love someone like me? Her words hung in the air like poison. Richard exhaled deeply. This conversation is going too far. Please leave. Tenny turned to him, her face twisting. So it's true, she spat. You're choosing her over me. Richard stared at her, shocked. How is that even a question? She's my fiancé. And that was the breaking point. That was the moment jealousy stopped being quiet. Tenny grabbed her handbag, eyes burning. You too will regret this. Both of you. Then she stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. Amaka stood frozen, tears already forming as her world began to crack. She whispered, why would she say that? Why would she act like this? Richard hugged her, but even his warmth couldn't stop the cold settling inside her chest. Amaka didn't sleep that night. She lay awake, replaying every smile, every childhood moment, every secret they shared. She tried to understand where she went wrong. She couldn't, but while she was drowning in confusion, Tenny was working. In the darkness of her small rented room, she dialed a number. Someone picked on the first ring. It's time, she said coldly. Start the plan. What do you want me to do? The voice asked. Tenny smirked. Simple. Make Amaka look like a mad woman. Make the man doubt her. Break them from inside. She ended the call and dropped on her bed, smiling to herself. But Tenny wasn't done. She opened a small box under her pillow. Inside were photos of Amaka, old love letters, small gift from childhood, and one picture of Richard she secretly took the day he visited. She ran her fingers over his face. If I can't have you, she whispered, then she won't have you in peace. In her twisted mind, she wasn't destroying a home. She was reclaiming what she believed should have been hers. Amaka had no idea that this was the night her life began to unravel. She didn't know the lies that would soon come, the traps that would be set, the dangers that would knock on her door. She had no clue her best friend had already chosen her destruction. The betrayal had begun, not with seduction, not with flirtation, but with war. A silent war that would tear her heart open. A war she didn't even know she was already losing. There are storms that come from the sky, and there are storms that come from people you once called family. Amaka was about to face the second kind. After Tenny's explosive outburst, life did not return normal. In fact, everything began to rot slowly like bread left in hot sun. Richard noticed it first. Amaka became quiet, too quiet. She smiled less. She stared into space more. She apologized for things she didn't do. She looked over her shoulder like someone waiting for disaster. And every time he asked, "Are you okay?" she whispered, "I don't know." But she still refused to believe that her best friend, the girl she called sister, would deliberately choose evil. Yet the truth was already knocking on her door. Tenny didn't waste time. Her plan started with a whisper. She went around telling neighbors and acquaintances. Amaka is not okay. She's stressed. She might be losing her mind. She told one person. She screams at Richard privately. Another person. She breaks things when she's angry. Another, she's unstable. She needs help. None of these things were true. But lies don't need truth, only repetition. And Tenny made sure her lies traveled faster than Amaka's innocence. Soon people began looking at Amaka differently, sympathetically, pityingly, suspiciously, and she didn't understand why. But the real damage came when Tenny targeted the one person whose opinion mattered most, Richard. She sent him anonymous messages. She created fake accounts to stir paranoia. She recorded voice notes of herself pretending to comfort someone crying and sent them to him as proof. Then she cleverly twisted small things in the house. She misplaced Amaka's keys. She had documents. She moved items and blamed Amaka indirectly. She sent unregistered numbers to call the house and keep silent. Richard didn't believe Tenny at first. But when coincidences became patterns, and patterns became problems, He began to worry. Late one evening, Richard returned from work to find Amaka sitting on the floor, crying as she searched under the couch. "What are you doing on the floor, my love?" he asked, kneeling beside her. I don't know where I kept the wedding documents," she said brokenly. "I remember holding them. Then I don't know what happened." Richard's heart cracked. She looked so genuinely confused, so lost. But Tenny's lies were whispering at the back of his mind. "Are you sure you didn't misplace them?" he asked gently. "I don't think so. I don't even remember anymore." Amaka burst into tears. Richard hugged her firmly, but a small fear entered his heart. What if something really was wrong? And that fear was exactly what Tenny needed. A few days later, the cracks widened. Amaka was preparing lunch when she suddenly smelled gas from the stove. The entire kitchen filled with a sharp, dangerous scent. She panicked, screaming and running out. Richard rushed inside, turned off the gas, and ventilated the room. But when he asked, trembling, "My love, who opened the gas?" Amaka looked at him, confused and terrified. "I didn't. I swear I didn't. I wasn't even near the stove." Her hand shook violently. But Richard remembered Tenny's whisper. "She forgets things. She does dangerous things. Be careful." That night, for the first time, Richard held her differently. Not with worry, but with fear. Amaka noticed it, and it crushed her soul. Later that week, the worst blow arrived. Richard's mother came to visit, a strong, traditional woman with sharp eyes. She loved Amaka deeply, until Tenny reached her first. Before Amaka could even serve her food, Richard's mother cleared her throat and said, "My daughter, people are talking. They say you are behaving strangely. Is everything all right?" Amaka froze. "What? Who is saying that?" "Your friend." Richard's mother said bluntly. "She told me she is worried about you. She said you cry randomly. She said you forget things. She said..." "That's a lie." Amaka cried, dropping the tray in her hands. The plates shattered on the floor. Why would she say that? Why? The poor woman burst into tears on her knees, picking broken china pieces with shaking fingers. Richard hurried to help her, but his mother stepped back quietly. And for the first time, someone looked at Amaka with fear and doubt instead of love. It broke something inside her. That night, Amaka collapsed on the bathroom floor, sobbing until her voice cracked. "Why is she doing this to me, Richard? Why? What did I ever do to her?" Richard held her, but he was shaking too. "I don't know anymore," he whispered. And that whisper was the loudest pain, because she heard the truth inside it. He was starting to doubt her. Exactly as Tenny planned. 2 days later, disaster arrived fully. It was a public disgrace. Richard invited a few friends and family to discuss the final wedding arrangements. Amaka had prepared food, decorated the living room, and practiced her smiles. She wanted everything to be perfect. But Tenny walked in wearing a white dress. White, the color of purity, mocking the woman she was about to destroy. During the gathering, Tenny pretended to wipe tears from her eyes. One of Richard's cousins asked, "What's wrong?" Tenny sighed deeply. "I don't want to say anything. I don't want to embarrass her." "Say what?" another relative asked. Tenny hesitated, letting the suspense grow like fire. Then she said softly, "Amaka pushed me last week. Hard. She screamed at me. She almost hit me. I think she's not okay." Gasps filled the room. Amaka felt her knees weaken. "What?" she cried. "That never happened. Why would you lie? Why?" Tenny stepped back dramatically, as if afraid of her. "Please, don't shout," she whispered. Amaka's voice trembled as tears flooded her eyes. "I'm not shouting. I'm just... She broke down. Right there, in front of everyone. People began murmuring. Richard stood frozen, torn between love and confusion. This was the moment Tenny wanted. To paint Amaka as unstable. To break her spirit. To destroy her image. To make the world doubt her. And it worked. In one night, Amaka lost her voice, her reputation, her strength, her joy, her dignity. She became a shell of the woman she used to be. And Tenny smiled quietly, satisfied, The fall of a good woman had begun. The truth has a strange way of rising, even when buried under the deepest lies. Like smoke, it finds a crack and escapes. And for Amaka, the cracks finally began to open. She had spent days moving like a shadow of herself. Her eyes were always swollen, her steps slow, her voice weak. She felt like she was losing her mind, losing her home, losing her love, losing her life. And worst of all, she felt like she was losing herself. Everywhere she went, people stared at her like she was something to be pitied. Whispers followed her like footsteps. Even children in the compound watched her cautiously. She didn't understand why the world had suddenly turned strange. One hot evening, as she walked back from the market with a nylon bag of vegetables, she saw the young girl from a neighboring house standing by the gate, fidgeting with her hands. The girl kept glancing at Amaka as though terrified of approaching. When their eyes finally met, the girl rushed over like someone being chased by guilt. "Auntie, please don't be angry," she whispered with trembling lips. Amaka frowned gently. "What is it?" The girl swallowed hard and looked around like the air itself was listening. "Auntie, that woman, the one that comes to your house, the one with long eyelashes," she stuttered. "She paid me and my brother to disturb you." Amaka froze on the spot. Her breath stopped. Her chest tightened. The girl continued, voice shaking with shame. "She gave me money to call your number and keep quiet many times. And she told my brother to move things around your veranda and hide your key and hide a brown envelope." The nylon bag fell from Amaka's hand. The tomatoes rolled on the ground, but she didn't even notice. Her heart cracked open right there on the dusty road. "So it wasn't me," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "It wasn't me forgetting." "No, Auntie," the girl whispered, stepping back. "She told us not to tell anybody. I'm sorry." Amaka pressed both hands to her chest and fell to her knees as the sun set behind her. She cried with the sound of a woman who had been called a liar, called unstable, called crazy, when she had been innocent all along. She stayed kneeling for a long time until her tears became too heavy to see through. The truth found her again 2 days later. Richard was at work when his friend Cunnel pulled him aside, looking uncomfortable. With a deep sigh, he said he had been holding something in for too long. "Your fiancé's friend, she came to me," he said. Richard felt a sting in his chest. Cunnel explained how Tenny told him that Amaka was mentally unstable and that he should help talk Richard out of the wedding. When he refused, Tenny began flirting with him, saying Richard was already tired of Amaka and she was the one helping him. That was the moment Richard felt shame creep into his bones. He had doubted the wrong person. Another truth followed soon after. Amaka's tailor came to visit her unexpectedly and admitted she had kept quiet for too long. That day in the tailor shop, before Amaka overheard anything, Tenny had proudly told another woman that she wanted Richard, that she deserved Richard, that Amaka was too gentle, too soft, too boring, and she would take whatever she wanted. Amaka broke again. She cried in her tailor's arms like a child. The truth was leaking from everywhere now, like a roof finally giving way after a long storm. That night, Richard sat beside her on the bed. She didn't look at him. She just stared at the wall with empty eyes. "You doubted me," she whispered with a trembling voice. Richard closed his eyes painfully. "I'm sorry. You believed her over me." "I was confused," he whispered. "You let her destroy me," she said, her voice breaking. Richard slowly took her hand, guilt heavy on his face. "I know," he whispered, "and I regret it." For the first time in many weeks, Amaka allowed herself to lean into his chest. He held her tightly, not out of fear this time, but out of realization. Pieces began to add up in his mind. The sabotage, the strange calls, the gas leak, the missing documents, the lies. Everything pointed to only one person. But while the truth was finally leaking into their lives, they didn't know that the storm Tenny was planning was far bigger than anything they had survived. They thought things were beginning to make sense. They thought the worst part was passing. They thought the lies were coming to an end. But Tenny had already prepared her final blow. A blow that would break what was left of their peace. A blow that would push Amaka into a darkness she didn't deserve. A blow that would change everything they thought they knew about betrayal. The truth may have started to leak, but the biggest destruction was still coming. There's a kind of wickedness that grows so bold it forgets that God is watching. And there is a kind of evil that rises so high it does not know its fall is already waiting. Tenny had pushed every boundary. She had lied, manipulated, confused, destroyed, and poisoned. She had done everything except one thing. She had not stopped. And when evil refuses to stop, karma starts moving. Quietly, slowly, dangerously. Amaka didn't plan revenge. She didn't set traps. She didn't fight back. She was too exhausted, too wounded, too broken. But sometimes, a broken heart is enough for the universe to respond. After Richard began piecing the truth together, he decided to observe carefully. He didn't tell Amaka. He didn't confront Tenny immediately. He simply watched. And very quickly, things began to show. The first sign came from a voice note. One morning, Richard's phone buzzed with a forwarded message from Connell. It was an audio clip. When he played it, he heard Tenny's voice clearly, giggling and bragging to a friend. If I break them finish, I go still be the one to comfort him. Men like Richard need someone like me. Not that his fiancé that cries like a lost child. Richard froze. His chest tightened with anger. He replayed it again. And again. And again. It wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty. He didn't tell Amaka. Not yet. But the fire inside him began to burn. Later that day, another truth unfolded by accident. The neighbor's house help, the same girl who confessed earlier, was caught by Tenny in the compound. Tenny pulled her aside and hissed angrily, "You the stupid girl. Why did you talk? Do you know who you're dealing with? If you open your mouth again, I'll—" What she didn't know was that the neighbor herself was standing behind the gate, hearing everything. The woman came out immediately. "So it was you?" she demanded. "You are the one causing this madness? You hired my children to do evil things." Tenny tried to smile, to pretend, to twist her words. But this time the mask slipped. The woman shouted loudly enough for people to hear. "You're wicked. This thing you're doing, God will judge you." People gathered. Murmurs began. Eyes widened. For the first time, Tenny felt things slipping from her grip, but she still didn't stop. Later that evening, she stormed into Amaka's compound, furious and careless. She entered with the confidence of someone who believed she owned the world. "Where is she?" she yelled. "Where is that stupid girl?" Richard came out first. "Which stupid girl?" he asked calmly. Tenny froze. She didn't expect him. Her face changed instantly, her voice softening, her posture switching from aggressive to artificial sweetness. "Oh, Richard, I didn't see you there." Richard watched her carefully, his eyes cold. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I came to check on my friend," she said quickly. "I heard she's not feeling well." Richard didn't blink. "You're the reason she's not well." The words were heavy, sharp, unmistakably true. Tenny swallowed hard. "Richard, don't talk like that. You know I've always cared about you." He stepped back immediately. "About me?" he repeated loudly. "You mean the man you tried to seduce? The man you tried to separate from his fiancée? The man you lied to? Manipulated? Tempted? Poisoned?" Her eyes widened with embarrassment and fear. "Richard! Please, let's talk inside." "Talk inside," he barked. "You think I don't know your plans? You think I don't know the chaos you created? You think I don't know the lies you whispered?" Amaka came out of the house slowly, her eyes red but her spirit quiet. The moment Tenny saw her, all shame disappeared. She hissed loudly. "So, because of this weakling you're shouting at me? Me? I'm better than her. I've always been better than her. She doesn't deserve you." Those words sliced the air. Amaka didn't move, didn't shout, didn't cry. She simply asked one question, voice soft and shaking. "Why?" Her soft why hit Tenny harder than any slap. Tenny opened her mouth and closed it. Her face twisted. Jealousy poured out of her like smoke. "Because you have everything," she spat. "Because people love you for no reason. Because life favors you without effort. Because every good thing comes to you first. Because you are always the one men choose. Because you are the one getting married while I'm still struggling. Because you are the one people respect. Because you are the one he loves. Her voice cracked with bitterness. You think I don't deserve the life you have? You think you're better than me? Amaka shook her head, tears falling. I never thought I was better, she whispered. I only ever loved you. Those words broke Richard's heart, and something shifted in the air. Tenny took a step back. Her eyes flickered. For the first time, she looked like someone who realized she had destroyed too much. But karma was not done with her. Neighbors began stepping out, watching. Whispers started rising. People murmured. So she was the one? Ah, wicked girl. She did all that. God will punish her. Shame washed over Tenny like cold rain. She wanted to leave quietly, but she had already been exposed. When she turned to walk away, her heels snapped. She stumbled. People gasped. She fell hard onto the rough cement floor. Her dress tore. Her wig shifted. Her pride shattered. It was symbolic. The universe making its first move. Karma had entered the compound, and its footsteps were just beginning. She stood up quickly, humiliated, and fled the compound without looking back. Amaka collapsed into Richard's arms, crying softly. But this time, the tears were different. They were not just pain, they were release. But they didn't know that Tenny's fall had only just begun. And the deepest part of her downfall, the darkest secret she had hidden, the most shocking thing she had done, was about to come out on its own. The truth had started leaking. But what was coming next would destroy every lie she ever built. Karma does not run. It walks slowly, gently, silently, until it arrives at the exact door it was meant to knock. And for Tenny, the door opened wide. After her humiliation in the compound, she disappeared for a few days. No calls, no visits, no drama. But silence from an enemy is never peace. It is preparation. Amaka tried to rest, tried to breathe, tried to recover. But pain has memory, and betrayal lives like a shadow. She would wake up at night shaking. Sometimes she cried until her pillow was drenched. Sometimes she held Richard like a frightened child. Sometimes she stared at the ceiling, wondering how love could twist into something so wicked. Richard tried everything. Warm meals, soft words, gentle touches. But a wound caused by a friend takes longer to heal than a wound caused by an enemy. Still, the truth had begun to unfold. And when truth begins to rise, it brings company. One evening, Richard received a message from an unknown number. It was a video. When he opened it, his jaw dropped. It was Tenny in a heated argument with a man inside a nightclub parking lot. She was drunk, wild, shouting, exposing everything. And in that drunken rage, she screamed things she had kept hidden for months. Things she bragged about. Things she confessed without knowing she was being recorded. You think I care about that moo-moo girl? She yelled. She's soft. Too soft. I used her. I destroyed her. I was the one calling her like mad. I moved her things. I did everything. And Richard will still come to me when I finish breaking them. She said more, much more. Things darker than anyone expected. Things too wicked for a woman who once called someone sister. The video spread, not because Richard sent it out, but because the man she was shouting at posted it online, mocking her, and it went around the neighborhood like wildfire. People gasped as they watched. Neighbors shook their heads. Even those who once believed her lies began calling Amaka privately. Forgive me. I didn't know. We misjudged you. We are so sorry. Richard's mother cried bitterly as she watched the video. My daughter, forgive me, she whispered as she hugged Amaka. Forgive me for doubting you. But Tenny's problems were only beginning. The nightclub owner recognized her. So did the house help's mother. So did some of Richard's colleagues. And one of Richard's relatives who had traveled even called. That girl? I warned you people. Her jealousy is deep. Everything Tenny built, every lie, every manipulation, every carefully constructed image, collapsed like a house with no foundation. And as usually happens when the truth comes, more truth followed. Her landlord confronted her about unpaid rent. Her side business partner exposed her for stealing money. Her ex-boyfriend revealed she had used him for financial gain. People she looked down on began speaking. Those she lied to began returning the shame. She became a spectacle, a warning, a lesson. But karma was not finished. Tenny tried to leave town quietly, hoping her shame would not follow her. She packed her bags, covered her face with a scarf, and boarded a public bus at dawn. But as the bus was about to move, two women sitting behind her began discussing something loudly. "Did you see that video of that wicked friend?" God forbid such a person. She wanted to destroy someone's home. That girl is evil. Tenny closed her eyes tightly. Her hands trembled. She shrank lower into her seat. But then the driver's phone rang. He connected it to the loudspeaker. A voice said loudly, "Driver, have you seen that viral video? That girl is wicked." Everyone in the bus began talking at once. "She resembles someone here, oh." "Yes, the shape of her head is the same. She looks like this woman wearing scarf." Tenny panicked. Her heart raced wildly. Without waiting, she grabbed her bag and ran off the bus in humiliation. People shouted behind her, some laughing, some cursing. She ran like someone chased by her own shadow. That was the day it finally hit her. Everything she built around lies had turned into a grave for her pride. Meanwhile, life slowly began to return to Amaka. Not perfect, not instantly healed, but calmer. She and Richard postponed the wedding to give her heart space. They focused on rebuilding trust. They prayed together. They sat in silence together. He apologized again and again, truly remorseful. She forgave slowly, softly, honestly. One night, Amaka stood on the balcony watching the moonlight on the compound. Richard came behind her, holding her waist gently. "How do you feel?" he whispered. She inhaled deeply, feeling the cold night breeze on her skin. "I feel like someone who survived a storm she didn't see coming." Richard rested his forehead against hers. "And I feel like a man who almost lost something precious because he did not protect it enough." She closed her eyes. "I'm not the same person anymore," she whispered. "Something inside me broke." He held her tightly. "Then we will build again," he said softly, slowly, patiently, together. Far away in a small, cheap room, Tenny sat alone on a broken mattress, her face swollen from crying, her phone buzzing nonstop with insults and mockery. She curled into herself, whispering the same question over and over. Why did life turn against me? But she never asked the real question. Why did I turn against someone who loved me? Because that was the truth. The world did not destroy her. Her own wickedness did. And as the night settled, one thing became clear. The betrayer had finally met her end. Not through violence, not through revenge, not through a fight, but through truth. And truth is the only punishment that never misses its target. After the truth finally exposed Tenny like fire revealing a snake in the grass, Amaka thought life would return to normal. She thought betrayal had ended. She thought the pain would slowly wash away. But the heart is not a wound that closes overnight. And trust, once broken, does not grow back like hair. It takes time. It takes patience. And sometimes it takes a new kind of heartbreak to show what truly matters. In the days following the viral video, the entire neighborhood buzzed with gossip. People whispered loudly any time Amaka or Richard stepped outside. Some were apologetic, others embarrassed, and a few just enjoyed the drama like it was a market show. Amaka walked with her head down, too ashamed to meet anybody's eyes, even though she had done nothing wrong. The weight of weeks of humiliation still sat heavy on her shoulders. Richard tried to shield her, walking close, holding her hand, whispering soft reassurances. But even he could not silence the world. And although he did everything in his power to pamper her back to strength, cooking, cleaning, canceling plans, keeping her close, there was something he could not control. The fear that had grown inside her. Fear that one day he might believe another lie. Fear that someone else could walk into their lives and turn everything upside down again. Fear that her goodness and kindness made her too open, too trusting, too vulnerable. One evening, As they sat quietly on the balcony, Richard watching the moon and Amaka staring at nothing, he finally asked a question he had been avoiding. "Do you still want to marry me?" It was a simple question, but it pierced through Amaka like a blade of doubt. She kept silent for a long time, the breeze lifting tiny strands of her hair. Then she whispered, "I don't know who to trust anymore, not even myself." Richard's heart broke again. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." But Amaka's eyes remained distant, haunted. "You doubted me so quickly," she said softly. "Maybe not fully, but your eyes changed. Your tone changed. Your steps changed. You were scared of me." He swallowed hard. "I was wrong." "I know," she said gently. "But wrong things leave scars." Richard reached for her hand, but she didn't move. She didn't pull away, but she didn't respond either. She sat like someone suspended between staying and leaving, between love and fear. He didn't push her. He just sat beside her, quiet, ashamed, hopeful. The next few days were slow, painful, confusing. They were neither lovers nor strangers, neither broken nor fully healed. They existed in a space where love waits for the heart to return. Meanwhile, far away from them, Tenny's life fell apart like dry bread touched by water. The landlord served her a quick notice. The man who posted the video blocked her. People crossed the street when they saw her. Shop owners refused to sell to her. Even her mother refused to let her stay at home, telling neighbors, "This one disgraced me." Let her face her shame outside. At night, Tenny cried until her voice went hoarse. She cursed herself. She cursed the world. She cursed jealousy. She cursed Amaka. She cursed love. Sometimes she sat in the dark, staring at the wall, asking no one, "Why me?" But the truth echoed quietly. "Because you sowed it, and now you're eating it." One particularly cold night, she walked for hours with her slippers dragging against the gravel, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. She reached the edge of a bridge and stood there, staring at the water below. Tears streamed down her face. She whispered things the wind carried away: regret, pain, anger, sorrow. She felt like the whole world was laughing at her, like her life was over, like she had no place left to stand. But something, maybe God, maybe guilt, maybe fear, pulled her back from the edge. She turned around, walked away, and disappeared into the night. Back in Amaka's life, something unexpected happened that changed everything again. Richard traveled for 2 days for a company project. He didn't want to leave her alone, but work demanded it. He dropped her at her parents' place to keep her safe and comfortable. Her mother welcomed her with warm food, warm arms, and warm prayers. But even there, Amaka couldn't sleep well. She kept replaying Tenny's words, Tenny's lies, Tenny's betrayal, and the fear that someone else could do the same to her someday. On the second night, as she sat outside alone under the mango tree, her phone buzzed. She thought it was Richard checking in. It wasn't. It was a number she didn't recognize. The message said, "Help me, please." Amaka's heart jumped. Another message came immediately. "I'm sorry. I didn't know it would end like this." Her hands trembled. She typed slowly, "Who is this?" The reply came instantly. "It's me." Amaka froze. Her breath stopped. Her fingers went cold. Tenny, the last person she ever wanted to hear from. Before she could reply, another message came. "I'm in trouble. Please, just talk to me." Amaka stood up from the bench, pacing nervously. Her heart raced with confusion. A part of her wanted to ignore it. Another part of her, a part that still remembered years of friendship, felt the pull of empathy. She typed shakily, "What do you want?" A long pause. Then, "I need to see you. Please." Amaka swallowed hard. "No," she whispered to herself. She typed, "I can't help you. Not after what you did." But before she could hit send, a call came in. It was the same number. Her mother, hearing her startled gasp, came outside. Who was calling? Amaka shook her head and stepped away, answering the call with trembling hands. A voice came through, broken, exhausted, trembling. "Amaka, please." She said nothing. "I'm sorry," Tenny whispered. I'm finished. Everything is gone. Silence stretched like a rope between them. I don't know what else to do, Tenny continued, sobbing softly. I don't have anyone else. Everyone hates me. Even my mother. Even my siblings. I'm sleeping outside. I'm hungry. People point at me. I think I'm losing my mind. Amaka felt a lump in her throat. Not sympathy. Not forgiveness. Just sadness for what jealousy had turned Tenny into. What do you want from me? She finally asked. Just to talk, Tenny whispered. Just explain myself. One last time. Please. I beg you. Amaka considered it. Fear battling compassion in her heart. Then Tenny said something that stopped the night itself. There's something you don't know, she cried. Something important. Something dangerous. Something I didn't tell you. And it concerns you. Amaka's heart dropped. What are you talking about? She whispered. Tenny sniffed shakily. Please meet me. Just once. I swear, after that, I'll disappear forever. Amaka hesitated for a long time. Then Tenny said the sentence that forced her decision. If you don't meet me, your life might be in danger. Amaka's breath vanished. Danger? From who? Why? She wanted to hang up. She wanted to walk away. She wanted to throw the phone into the bushes. But something, fear, curiosity, or old loyalty, made her whisper, Where are you? When Amaka asked where are you, her voice did not sound like her own. It sounded like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, terrified of falling yet unable to step back. For a long moment, there was only silence on the other end of the line. Silence filled with fear, with shame, with the weight of all the damage that had been done. Then Tenny whispered, Near the old community hall behind the building. Please come. I'm begging you. I swear I won't harm you. I just need to talk. Amaka's heart raced. The community hall was a short walk from her parent house, a place familiar, yet suddenly frightening. Her mother approached again, her brows drawn in worry. Who are you talking to at this hour? She asked gently. Amaka hesitated. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how much to reveal. She only knew that something heavy and dangerous was tangled in Tenny's trembling voice. It's someone who needs help, she muttered. Her mother frowned. At this time of night? My daughter, leave them. Let them find help in the morning. Amaka nodded automatically, but her heart was not aligned with her steps. She paced back and forth, her mind battling itself. Everything inside her screamed that she should stay home, that she had suffered enough, that Tenny's problems were no longer her burden. But Tenny's last words kept echoing loud in her skull. If you don't meet me, your life might be in danger. Danger. That one word could shake even a mountain. Amaka didn't want to leave without telling her mother the truth, but she also didn't want to worry her unnecessarily. So she inhaled deeply, stepped close, and held her mother's hands. I'll be back soon, she whispered. Her mother frowned deeper. Where are you going at this time? I just need fresh air. The compound is noisy. You are not yourself, Amaka. Wait till morning. But Amaka forced a small smile. I'll be quick. She left before her courage faded. The night air was cold, brushing against her skin like a warning. Street lights flickered weakly. Dogs barked in the distance, and the rustle of leaves felt like whispers following her. With every step toward the community hall, she felt her heartbeat in her throat. When she finally reached the back of the building, she stopped. A single streetlight stood nearby, bathing the area in a pale orange glow. Shadows stretched long and thin. Tenny, she called, her voice small. There was no answer at first. Then, slowly, from behind the hall wall, a figure emerged, thin, disheveled, exhausted. It was Tenny, but this was not the Tenny Amaka knew. Not the girl who strutted with pride. Not the woman who wore heavy makeup and expensive clothes. Not the friend who walked like she owned every room she entered. This Tenny looked like someone life had beaten flat. Her hair was messy, her clothes rumpled, her eyes swollen from crying. There was a heaviness around her, like shame had settled onto her bones. Amaka took a cautious step back. Tenny, why did you call me here? Tenny held up her hands weakly. I'm not here to fight you. I swear, I needed to tell you the truth before I disappear. Amaka swallowed. What truth? Tenny's lips trembled. Tears spilled down her cheeks instantly. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She only sobbed softly, her shoulders shaking like someone in deep pain. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for being wicked. I'm sorry for betraying you. I'm sorry for destroying your peace. I'm sorry for trying to take your happiness. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for lying. I'm sorry for all of it." Her voice cracked like glass under pressure. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything from you. I needed to say sorry before I tell you the rest." Amaka's heart ached. She didn't respond. She couldn't. Tenny wiped her face roughly, her breath shaking. "There's something you don't know. Something I hid. Something I never planned to tell anyone. But it's the reason I became so obsessed with your life and with Richard." Amaka's brows drew together. "What is it?" Tenny looked up, tears glistening on her cheeks. "Richard, he wasn't just your fiancé to me. I knew him before you ever introduced us." Amaka's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Tenny's voice broke. "Years ago, before you started dating him, I met him at a workshop. We met once. He doesn't remember me, but I remembered him. I liked him. I wanted him. I told myself one day I'd meet him again. One day I'd have him. So when you told me you were dating someone, I didn't care. But the moment I saw him and realized it was the same man, I lost control." Amaka stared at her, stunned. Her pulse thudded loudly in her ears. "So everything you did, it was because you wanted him?" she whispered painfully. Tenny nodded slowly. "And because I hated myself for wanting something you had. Every time you smiled, I felt like life was mocking me. Every time he touched you, I felt like I was dying. I didn't plan to hate you. It just happened. And I became someone I didn't recognize." Amaka felt the sting of tears, but held them back. "You could have just walked away, Tenny." "I know," Tenny whispered, "but jealousy feels like fire. It burns logic, burns morality, burns friendship. It blinded me. I kept telling myself, if I broke you two apart, he would look at me. He would notice me. He would choose me. But I forgot that love doesn't come through wickedness. And now look at me." She pointed at her own disheveled body, brokenness spilling through every pore. "I've lost everything." Amaka didn't know what to say. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel pity. She felt something deeper, heartbreak for what friendship had become, for what jealousy had turned a sister into. Tenny stepped closer, but Amaka instinctively stepped back. "I won't hurt you," Tenny said softly. "I don't have the strength for evil anymore." Then her voice dropped lower, filled with fear. "But that's not all. There's something bigger, something dangerous, something I should have told you when it started, something I hid because I was ashamed and because I didn't want to face the consequences." Amaka stiffened. "What is it?" Tenny looked around nervously, as though someone might be listening. Her breath hitched. "Do you remember those strange phone calls? The messages? The things that went missing?" Amaka nodded slowly. "It wasn't only me," Tenny whispered shakily. "I wasn't working alone." Amaka's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" she whispered. Tenny swallowed hard. "There's someone else. Someone who helped me at the beginning. Someone who hates you more than I ever did. Someone who still wants to destroy you." Amaka's heart thundered. Her skin prickled. "Who?" she breathed. Tenny took a shaky breath. "It's someone very close to you. Someone you trust." Amaka's stomach twisted. Her legs trembled. "Tenny, who is it?" Tenny opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say the name, a loud crack sounded from behind them. Amaka spun around. A shadow moved. A presence lurked. Someone had been listening. Tenny's eyes widened in terror. "Amaka, run!" But before Amaka could move, the shadow rushed forward, and the night shattered. The shadow lunged before Amaka could take a single step. A rough hand grabbed her arm so violently that she cried out in shock, stumbling backward. Her heart slammed against her ribs, breath caught in her throat. For a moment, the night twisted around her like a nightmare come alive. Tenny gasped, frozen in terror. "Leave her alone!" she screamed, her voice cracking. The figure stepped fully into the weak streetlight. Amaka's eyes widened, her blood turning to ice. It was a man, but not just any man. It was the same man who had filmed Tenny, mocked her online, used her during her downfall. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes bloodshot from drugs or alcohol, his breath thick with bitterness and something darker. He looked desperate, unhinged, dangerous. "So this is a little girl causing all the commotion," he said with a slow, poisonous grin, tightening his grip on Amaka's arm. Amaka's voice trembled. "Let me go, please." But he only laughed. "Why? When the two of you owe me answers." Tenny stepped forward fearfully. "Segan, don't do this. Please. This has nothing to do with her. Let her go." Segan turned, his face twisting with rage. "Shut up. You? After disgracing me online? After running your mouth to people like I'm useless? You think you'll walk away freely?" Tenny flinched. "I didn't post a video." "I don't care." Segan snapped. "You embarrass me. You made people laugh at me. Now I'm the one who can't walk freely because of you." He pulled Amaka closer, using her as a shield. She trembled violently, her breath uneven. "Segan, please," Tenny begged, voice shaking. "Don't hurt her. Hurt me if you want. She didn't do anything. Please." "Hurt you?" Segan barked. "I don't want to just hurt you. I want to hurt everything you love, everything connected to you, everything you still pretend to care about." Amaka shut her eyes tightly as tears slipped down her cheeks. She couldn't speak. Her body shook uncontrollably. Segan leaned in close, his voice low and venomous. "You think you two can whisper about me? Plan against me? No, no more secrets. I heard what you said. Someone else wants to destroy her, right? Someone close to her? Good. Then tonight, I start the destruction myself." Tenny screamed. "No. Segan, stop. Stop. Please." He ignored her and tightened his grip on Amaka's neck. She gasped for air. Tenny rushed forward wildly, grabbing his arm. "Let her go. Let her go." He shoved Tenny so hard she fell to the ground, scraping her elbow. She winced in pain but pushed herself up again, crying, "Please, please don't do this." Segan snarled and raised his free hand, ready to strike Amaka. In that split second, something inside Tenny snapped. She threw herself at Segan with everything she had, clawing, pulling, screaming like someone possessed. The sudden force made him lose his balance. Amaka stumbled free, falling back against the wall, coughing, gasping. Segan roared in fury and grabbed Tenny by the throat, lifting her harshly. "You think you can fight me?" Tenny choked, her eyes terrified but burning with desperate courage. "You won't touch her." "Watch me," Segan hissed. He raised his other hand and struck her across the face. The sound echoed sharply through the alley. Tenny fell to the ground, limp, coughing, sobbing. Amaka tried to call out, but fear strangled her voice. She could barely breathe, barely think. Segan stepped toward her again. "No more running," he growled. "Tonight." He didn't finish. A loud voice cut through the night. "Hey, what are you doing there?" A security guard from a nearby mechanic shop was approaching, shining a flashlight directly at them. Behind him, two young men followed cautiously. Segan froze like a trapped animal. The guard shouted again, "Leave them alone! Now!" For a moment, the world held its breath. Then Segan spat on the ground, glared at Amaka and Tenny, and bolted into the dark alley, disappearing like a coward chased by his own demons. Amaka collapsed to her knees, shaking uncontrollably. Tenny crawled toward her, sobbing as she touched her shoulder gently. Amaka, are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Amaka couldn't respond. She could only cry. Deep, silent, overwhelming tears. The guard and the two men reached them. One of the men helped Amaka stand. The other supported Tenny. They asked questions, offered help, but Amaka couldn't hear any of it. The world felt distant, muffled, unreal. She kept whispering to herself, Why is this happening?" Her legs nearly gave out. Tenny held her arms tightly, crying, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't know he followed me. I didn't know he knew where I was. I didn't know this would happen. Amaka finally looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, she didn't see an enemy. She didn't see a betrayer. She didn't see a rival. She saw a broken human being, a woman carrying her own demons, a friend destroyed by jealousy, but still capable of protecting her. "Tenny," she whispered weakly. Tenny sobbed harder. "I'm sorry. I know," Amaka whispered. The men insisted on walking them home. The journey felt like hours, though it was only minutes. Amaka's legs shook the whole way. Tenny stayed beside her, refusing to leave her side. When they reached home, her mother ran out in panic, grabbing Amaka into her arms. "Jesus, where have you been? What happened?" Amaka broke down completely. The sobs tore through her like a storm. Her mother held her tight, whispering prayers, calling God, calling ancestors, calling angels. Tenny stood at a distance, trembling, guilty, ashamed, wounded. The neighbors gathered. Questions flew. Voices rose. Lights turned on. Confusion spread. Richard returned that night, not by chance, but because something in his spirit told him to come home early. When he arrived and saw Amaka collapse in her mother's arms, crying uncontrollably, he felt like someone had stabbed him. He rushed forward, dropping his bags. "Amaka, what happened? Who touched you?" "What?" Amaka clung to him, crying into his chest, unable to explain. Tenny stood behind them, shaking, whispering, I'm sorry. Richard turned, his eyes filled with fire. "You again? What did you do?" Tenny raised her hands in surrender, tears streaming. "I didn't do anything. I swear, I was trying to protect her." Her mother stepped between them. "Richard, calm down. Someone attacked them. That man from the video. He nearly strangled your fiancé." Richard's face changed. Fear gripped him. He looked at Amaka again. Her tears soaked his shirt. Her voice was thin, cracked. He wanted to hurt me." Richard held her tighter, his own tears escaping. He whispered against her hair, I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you again." But deep inside him, something darker grew. A realization, a fear, a burning question. If Tenny wasn't the only one trying to destroy Amaka, then who was the other person? Who else hated her? Who had Tenny been about to reveal before the attack? Who was close enough to do damage? That night did not end with answers. It ended with fear. Fear that this was not over. Fear that another enemy was still hiding. Fear that the next strike could be worse. The night of the attack did not end when the shouting died. It did not end when neighbors drifted back to their houses, whispering prayers under their breath. It did not end when Amaka's frantic crying slowed into soft, trembling sobs. It didn't even end when the police arrived, took statements, and promised a search for Segan, though everyone knew a man like him could slip through anything. The night lingered like a heavy spirit, refusing to leave. Richard did not sleep at all. He sat on the floor beside the bed where Amaka lay curled like a wounded child, her mother beside her rubbing her back gently, whispering prayers. The moon pressed its pale light to the curtains, casting long shadows across the room. Shadows that looked like hands creeping along the walls, reaching for her, threatening her peace again. Every time Amaka closed her eyes, she saw that darkness rushing toward her. She felt that rough hand on her arm. She heard the crack of something behind her. She relived the moment Segan grabbed her neck. She heard Tenny scream. She saw the fear in security guard's flashlight. She could not rest. She would jolt awake every few minutes, gasping, clutching the bedsheet like a lifeline. Richard watched her with guilt tearing at his insides. He had failed her. He had promised to protect her, but she had faced the most terrifying night of her life alone. Tears touched the corners of his eyes more than once. He hid his face behind his hands. Shame burned him like fever. His hands shook as he whispered silent apologies. At one point, when Amaka drifted into a shallow sleep, Richard stepped outside onto the balcony, his fists clenched against the railings. The night air was cold, but the anger inside him burned hotter than any sun. "Who else?" he whispered to the darkness. Who else hates her? Who else wants to break her? Who else is hiding? The question gnawed at him with sharp teeth. When dawn finally came, it did not bring peace. It brought questions, police inquiries, neighbors' stares, rumors, and suspicion. And with each passing hour, Richard's fear grew heavier. He felt the presence of something unseen, something unfinished, something dangerous still lurking in their lives. By noon, Tenny returned. She came to the house with her head bowed, low like a sinner approaching the altar. She carried a small nylon bag filled with fruit, an apology gesture her trembling hands could barely hold. When Amaka's mother saw her at the gate, she nearly slammed the door shut. "You!" she shouted. "Haven't you done enough?" Tenny nodded, eyes full of tears. "I came to say thank you for last night. If Amaka hadn't answered me, that man would have killed me too." Amaka's mother pointed outside. "Leave now before I call the police." But Richard stepped forward. "Let her in." Amaka's mother turned sharply. "Richard." "I need to hear what she was about to say," he said quietly. That silenced everyone. They let her in. Tenny walked slowly, like each step carried the weight of her crime. She entered the sitting room where Amaka sat wrapped in a shawl, her eyes swollen, her spirit cracked. Tenny knelt before her, placing the nylon bag on the ground like an offering to a queen she had once betrayed. "I am sorry," she whispered again, voice breaking. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to come." Amaka said nothing. Richard stood behind her, arms crossed. "Tell us who the other person is," he demanded. "You said someone else hates her." "Someone close." "Who?" Tenny swallowed. She looked at Amaka, then Richard, then at the ground. Her fingers trembled violently. "It's someone you both know." Richard's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Tenny's lips parted, but before she could speak, the front door burst open. Amaka's father rushed in, breathless, holding his phone high. "Richard!" "Amaka, something has happened." Richard tensed. "What is it?" "It's Segan," her father said, panting. "Someone saw him near the junction. He was shouting your name. Amaka, he said he's not done. The police are looking for him, but he escaped again." Amaka's heart stopped. Tenny gasped in terror. "He's looking for you?" "Again." Her father nodded. "Yes." "And he said someone is helping him. Someone is guiding him." The room fell silent, so silent that the ticking wall clock sounded like thunder. Richard stepped forward slowly. Tenny said the same thing, that someone else was involved. Amaka's father frowned. "Someone? Who?" All eyes turned to Tenny. Her breath shook. Her hands trembled. She pressed her palms together as if praying. "Please," she whispered. "Listen carefully. The person helping Segan, the person who hates Amaka, the person who joined me at the beginning," her voice broke, "is someone you never expected." The room held its breath. Richard took a step closer. "Say the name." Tenny's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head, choking on fear. I'm scared." Richard raised his voice. "Tenny, say the name." Tenny flinched. "It's someone in your family." Amaka gasped. Her mother let out a sharp cry. Richard's face went blank with shock. "No," he whispered. "No, that's not possible." Tenny nodded, tears streaming. "It is—" Richard's heartbeat roared in his ears. His mind spun. "Who in my family?" he demanded. Tenny looked at Amaka, then at Richard. Her lips trembled. "Your mother," she whispered. Silence. Absolute silence. Like the world stopped breathing. Amaka froze. Her mother gasped. Richard staggered backward. "My mother?" he whispered, voice hollow. Tenny nodded slowly. "Yes." Richard shook his head violently. "You're lying." "I'm not," Tenny said through tears. "She came to me first. She said Amaka was not the right woman for you. She said she didn't want her son to marry someone like her. She told me things about Amaka's past she wasn't supposed to know. She told me to help her break you two apart." Amaka's face drained of color. "No," she whispered weakly. Tenny continued, voice shaking. "She paid me to start small fights, to scare Amaka, to make you doubt her. But I didn't know she would go so far. I didn't know she was also talking to Segan. I didn't know she would involve someone dangerous. Richard's chest tightened painfully. My mother? Why would she? Amaka's mother stepped between them, furious. Tenny, are you mad? How dare you accuse an innocent woman? Tenny sobbed. I'm telling the truth. She was the one who told me what Amaka fears. She was the one who warned me be careful, because Amaka was stupidly loyal. She was the one who said if the wedding doesn't scatter, she'll scatter herself. Richard stood frozen, his breath shallow. Enough, he whispered. Enough. But Tenny wasn't done. She wiped her tears and whispered the final words that sucked all air out of the room. She met Segan twice. She paid him once. She told him to keep Amaka uncomfortable. She told him to break her spirit. She told him to frighten her. But I swear she didn't know he would try to kill her. Amaka's body trembled so hard that she nearly fell. Richard's vision blurred. His mother, the woman he loved, the woman he trusted, the woman he defended, the woman who prayed over him, the woman he believed would die for him, was the same woman who tried to destroy the woman he chose to love. He collapsed into a chair, shaking. Amaka clutched her chest, whispering, Why? What did I do to her? Tenny cried harder. She said you were too soft, too simple, that you don't deserve her son, that your family background is not good enough, that he deserved a better wife. Richard groaned in pain, holding his head. No. The truth had exploded like a bomb. The last betrayal had been revealed. The deepest wound had been opened, and the person behind the worst part of their suffering was his own mother. The room felt like it had stopped breathing. The fan whirred softly overhead, but no one heard it. Outside, children were laughing 2 compounds away, but even their voices felt distant, swallowed by the heavy silence that filled the house. It was a kind of silence that comes when truth finally walks into the room and everyone realizes that lies were more comfortable than reality. Richard sat hunched, elbows on his knees, hands gripping his hair. His breath came in shallow bursts like someone drowning in water too deep to stand in. Everything he believed about his life was suddenly shifting under his feet, cracking like old cement. His father always told him, a man can marry many women, but he has only one mother. But what happens when that mother becomes the enemy of the woman he loves? Amaka sat frozen, her eyes wide and wet. She felt like she was watching her entire life rewrite itself. The pieces she thought she could handle, the betrayal, the lies, the sabotage, those pieces suddenly felt small compared to this new wound. There is nothing more painful than being hated by someone you wanted to love you. Her mother stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, her chest rising and falling with anger. This is madness, she muttered. This girl is lying. She is just looking for someone else to blame. Tenny shook her head quickly. I am not lying. I swear on everything I have left. I didn't want to say anything at first, because I was scared of her. She's powerful. She's respected. But after what happened last night, I can't keep quiet again. Richard's voice finally broke through. It sounded small, weak, unfamiliar. What did my mother promise you? Tenny blinked, wiping a tear from her cheek. She promised me money, and she promised to help me get a government job. She said once Amaka was out of the picture, she would make sure you met someone better. Richard closed his eyes. His chest rose and fell sharply. The pain on his face was raw, like someone ripped open his rib cage and exposed his heart to cold harmattan air. Amaka watched him, her own heart twisting. She wanted to reach for him, to comfort him, to tell him they would get through it, but her body wouldn't move. She was afraid to break the fragile wall of silence that held them together. Tenny, Richard whispered, why didn't you say all this earlier? Why now? Tenny swallowed hard. Because I didn't realize things had gone too far. I thought I was only helping break the 2 of you apart. I didn't know Segan was involved until I saw him talking to her. He said she gave him money to shake things small. I swear, I didn't know he would lose control. Amaka's stomach twisted. So all this, all the lies, all the fear was engineered? Tenny sniffed. Yes, it was. Amaka pressed both hands to her mouth, overwhelmed. Her voice cracked. Why? Why would a mother do that to me? To us? Tenny whispered. She believes you're not good enough. Amaka felt her chest hair open. Not good enough? Richard finally stood. His hands trembled. His face was pale with shock and grief. She said Amaka lacked class. Tenny whispered. She said Amaka's family was not polished enough. She said you deserve someone from a higher society. She even said childbirth might change her body, and she didn't want a fat, tired wife for her son. Amaka gasped sharply as though stabbed. Richard stumbled backward like the words physically pushed him. My mother would never say that, he muttered in denial. But Tenny shook her head. She did, and she said more. She said if she couldn't stop the wedding peacefully, she would find another way. This is too much, Amaka's mother whispered, tears in her eyes. This is wickedness. Richard rubbed his forehead, pacing the floor. Every part of him shivered from betrayal. His own mother, the woman who raised him, clothed him, prayed over him, was also the architect of his fiancé's suffering. Where is she now? He asked quietly. Tenny's eyes widened. Please, don't go to her angry. She will deny everything. She will twist your mind. I just want to talk, Richard said, his voice trembling. You don't sound like someone who wants to talk, Amaka's mother warned. Richard shook his head sharply. I have to. I need to hear it from her mouth. Suddenly, someone knocked at the door. 3 slow knocks. Everyone froze. Amaka's father stepped forward cautiously and opened the door halfway. Standing there, wearing her expensive wrapper tied tightly at the waist, her headscarf perfectly knotted, her face calm, composed, unreadable, was Richard's mother. She looked around the room slowly, her eyes landing on Richard, then Amaka, then Tenny. Good afternoon, she said quietly. Richard's heart nearly stopped. His mother walked in calmly, as though she already knew what had been said. She stood tall, proud, and frighteningly silent. The room turned to ice around her. Tenny, she said without raising her voice, have you finished lying? Tenny's lips trembled. She looked down at the floor. I'm telling the truth. Richard's mother stepped closer until she stood only a few inches away from Tenny. Then look at me, she said firmly. Look at me and repeat what you just said. Tenny forced herself to look up. For a moment her courage shook. Then she whispered, You were the one who asked me to break them. Richard's mother didn't flinch. And what do you gain by saying this? She asked coldly. Nothing, Tenny whispered. I just want to free my conscience. Richard's mother turned to Richard. My son, she said gently, you know me? You know how much I love you. Will you believe this girl? Or your own mother? Richard's throat tightened. He stared at her with pain in his eyes. Did you meet Segan? He asked softly. His mother blinked. Who? The man who attacked Amaka. She hesitated, just for 1 second. But that 1 second was enough. Richard stepped back. You know him, he whispered. You know him. His mother's lips pressed together. I don't like your tone. Tell me the truth. Richard shouted, voice cracking with emotion. Silence. Then his mother's face hardened. Her eyes shifted toward Amaka, sharp with the coldness of a woman who believed she was right. I did what I had to do, she said quietly. Amaka gasped. Richard staggered backward. What were you saying? Amaka whispered, trembling. Richard's mother raised her chin proudly. A mother protects her son, she said. Richard whispered, by destroying his happiness? She looked at Amaka with thinly veiled disdain. You were never meant for him. Amaka burst into tears, clutching her shawl tight. Richard's mother continued, I will not apologize for protecting my son from a future mistake. You are a good girl, but not good enough for him. Richard pressed his hand against the wall, as if needing support to stand. Do you hear yourself? He whispered in disbelief. I hear myself clearly, she replied. Tenny sobbed. So you admit it. Richard's mother turned to her sharply. I admit nothing. But if I did it out of love. Richard stepped closer, voice trembling. Love? Mother, what you did is not love. She took a long breath. One day you will thank me. Never, he whispered. The room shook with the weight of that one word. His mother's eyes flickered with hurt, then anger, then pride. "You want to choose her over me?" she asked. Richard didn't answer. She looked at Amaka one last time. "You will regret this," she said coldly. Then she turned and walked out of the house, without looking back, leaving behind a room full of broken hearts and shattered illusions. Amaka collapsed into sobs. Richard fell to his knees, weeping into his hands. Tenny cried quietly in the corner. It was a night of pain, a night of truth, a night that would change everything. And as Richard held Amaka tightly, shaking, one question burned through the air. How do you fight an enemy you cannot cut off? Your own blood. The moment Richard's mother walked out of the house, a suffocating silence swallowed the room. It was a kind of silence that came after an earthquake, where everything was technically still standing, but nothing was truly stable anymore. Richard remained kneeling on the floor, his chest rising and falling as if he had run miles. His face was buried in his hands, and his entire body trembled under the weight of the truth that had finally come out. Amaka watched him through tears of her own, her heart cracking open all over again. Not from betrayal this time, but from the sight of the man she loved breaking piece by piece. She had never seen Richard cry this way. Deep, raw, uncontrollable. It wasn't just pain. It was a grief only a child feels when realizing a parent is imperfect in a way that can never be undone. Her mother knelt beside her, rubbing her back gently. Tenny sat in a corner, hugging her knees, her face buried, her body shaking from guilt and exhaustion. "Richard," Amaka finally whispered, her voice fragile. He looked up at her slowly, his eyes red and swollen, confusion swimming in them. "Why?" he breathed. "Why would she do this? Why would my own mother hate the woman I love?" Amaka wiped her cheeks weakly. "Because some people fear losing control, even over the happiness of others." Richard shook his head in disbelief. "But she raised me with love. How can love become so ugly?" Amaka's tears fell again. "Because love mixed with pride becomes poison." Her mother nodded gently. "My son, there is no pain like discovering that your parent is the one burning your home." Richard's chest tightened until he felt like he couldn't breathe. He stood shakily and walked outside, needing air, needing space to think, to breathe, to understand how his world had turned upside down in just a few hours. Amaka followed him slowly, her slippers dragging along the tiles. She found him standing in the compound, staring at the sky as if trying to find answers among the stars. "I don't know what to do," he whispered as she approached. "I don't know how to face her. I don't know how to continue with this wedding. I don't even know who I am right now." Amaka stood beside him, their shoulders touching. "We will figure it out. Together." "Together," he repeated, his voice cracking. "But if I choose you, she will see it as betrayal. And if I choose her, I lose you." Amaka felt her heart squeeze painfully. "I don't want you to choose between us. I just want peace. I want love. I want healing. But right now, everything feels like fire." Richard covered his face again, shaking. Suddenly, Amaka admitted something she had been hiding deep inside. "Richard, I'm scared." He turned to her slowly. "Of my mother?" "No," she whispered. "Of losing myself. Of losing us. Of living in a marriage where I'm constantly fighting for a place that should already be mine. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that battle." Richard grabbed her hands desperately. "Don't leave me," he pleaded. "Please don't leave me." Amaka's heart broke at the fear in his voice. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I don't want to leave. I love you, but your mother, she will never accept me." "She will have to," Richard said, voice trembling. But even he didn't sound convinced. They held each other silently, their tears mixing, their hearts beating too fast, their breaths shaky. Inside the house, Tenny watched from the doorway. For once, there was no envy in her eyes, only regret. She whispered to herself, "Look at what I destroyed. Look at what I nearly ended." She wiped her cheeks and stood up. "I have to fix something. I have to make something right." When Richard and Amaka walked back inside, Tenny approached timidly. "I know I can't undo what I caused," she said softly. "But I can tell you this. Richard, your mother is not done. She will come again. She will not back down. She didn't want this truth to come out, so she will fight harder now that it has. Amaka's pulse quickened. Richard closed his eyes painfully. And there's more, Tenny continued. She said something to Segan. Something I didn't want to believe. Something terrifying. What? Richard whispered sharply. Tenny swallowed, her voice barely audible. She said if Amaka refuses to step away quietly, then she'll be forced to remove her by any means necessary, even if it takes permanent damage. Amaka gasped. Richard froze, his face turning white. My mother said what? He shouted. Tenny trembled. Yes, she said it. She said Amaka is stubborn, and stubborn women sometimes need strong lessons. I didn't understand at the time, but after last night, I think she meant something serious, something dangerous. Amaka staggered backward in terror. Her mother gasped, holding her tightly. Richard clenched his fists, rage consuming him. I'm going to her house right now. She will explain herself. Amaka grabbed him desperately. Richard, no. Don't go angry. Please. But he tore his hand away. She tried to harm you. My own mother. Richard, she cried. Please, listen. But the fury had already swallowed him. He stormed out of the house, slamming the gate so hard the metal rang through the compound. Richard, come back. Amaka screamed after him. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. He disappeared into the night. Amaka collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. Her mother held her tightly. Tenny sank to the floor, guilt crashing over her like a tidal wave. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. Richard did not return. The night grew colder. The neighborhood fell silent. And then a knock shook the front gate. 3 sharp knocks. The same pattern from earlier. Everyone froze. Amaka's heartbeat thudded loudly. Her mother whispered, Who is knocking at this time? Tenny's voice shook. It might be him. But Amaka's spirit felt strange. Heavy. Warning. Something was wrong. Her father walked cautiously to the gate. Who is there? He called out. No answer. He asked again, louder. Who is there? Still silence. Then a voice whispered faintly through the metal gate. Open, please. It was Richard's voice. But something about it sounded wrong. Shaky. Weak. Almost fading. Amaka rose instantly, her entire body trembling. Richard? But her mother grabbed her arm. Wait. They all approached the gate cautiously. Her father opened it slowly, and what they saw made Amaka scream, so loudly the whole street woke up. Richard was standing there, staggering, barely able to hold himself up. Blood dripped from his forehead. His shirt was torn. His face was bruised. His knees were shaking. His breathing was shallow and strangled. He collapsed into Amaka's arms before anyone could catch him fully. His voice cracked in a whisper. It wasn't an accident. Amaka sobbed, holding him tightly. Richard, what happened? Richard lifted a trembling hand, pointing weakly behind him. His voice was barely audible. She tried to kill me. Amaka froze. Her blood turned to ice. Richard's head fell against her shoulder as he whispered the last words before losing consciousness. My mother, she sent someone after me, and the night swallowed them all in horror.